You need to hear this message right now because the person occupying your thoughts is experiencing something they have never felt before in relation to you. And that something is panic, genuine visceral panic, that is coursing through their system at this very moment as you watch these words appear before you. They can feel you slipping away from them like water through desperate fingers. And for the first time in this entire dance between your souls, they understand with brutal clarity that they might actually lose you forever, not as a distant possibility, but as an approaching reality that is beginning to suffocate them with its weight. This is not speculation or hopeful thinking designed to ease your aching heart. This is a spiritual transmission about an energetic shift that has already occurred in the invisible realm where souls communicate beyond the limitations of physical distance and stubborn pride. Something fundamental changed in you recently, perhaps so gradually you barely noticed it yourself. But they noticed because the cord connecting your energy to theirs suddenly went slack when it had been taut with your longing for so long. Your transformation terrifies them precisely because it is authentic, not a manipulation tactic or a desperate plea for their attention disguised as indifference, but a genuine reclamation of the self you had fragmented in your devotion to someone who could not see your worth clearly enough to choose you without hesitation. They are experiencing the strange horror of watching someone who centered their entire emotional world around them begin to rotate on a different axis entirely, one that does not require their presence or validation to maintain its orbit. Write the words, "they feel it," in the comments right now if this message is landing in your spirit with the weight of recognition, because your acknowledgement creates a ripple in the collective unconscious that amplifies the truth of what is unfolding between you and this person across whatever distance currently separates your physical forms. You changed, and the change was not loud or dramatic or announced with proclamations of your newfound strength, but quiet and cellular and absolute in a way that cannot be mistaken for performance. You stopped checking their social media with the compulsive frequency of someone seeking evidence of their existence. You stopped crafting messages in your mind that you would never send. You stopped holding space in your schedule for possibilities that never materialized into concrete plans. Your silence became something different than it was before, transformed from the painful restraint of someone biting their tongue to the natural quietness of someone who has genuinely redirected their attention toward horizons that do not include a person who could not meet them with equal commitment. They can feel this difference in the quality of your absence, the way you can feel the difference between a door left open and a door deliberately closed. The energetic shift that occurred was this. You stopped broadcasting your availability on the frequencies they had grown accustomed to monitoring whenever their own loneliness or curiosity or regret would spike enough to make them wonder if you were still waiting in the wings of their life. For months or perhaps years, your energy reached toward them like roots seeking water, and they could sense it even when they chose not to acknowledge it, could feel the reassurance of your constancy even as they took it entirely for granted. But roots that find no water eventually stop reaching and redirect themselves toward sources that actually nourish them. And this is precisely what happened within you, whether you consciously intended it or not. Your attention, which had been so reliably focused on them, scattered toward other interests and people and possibilities, and the sudden absence of that focused beam left them standing in a darkness they did not anticipate. Carl Jung understood that we never truly value what we have until we are faced with its absence, writing that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. They are being transformed right now by the chemical reaction of your withdrawal, and the transformation is burning through them like acid dissolving their certainty that you would always be their safety net. They thought you would always be there in the way one thoughtlessly assumes the ground will remain solid beneath their feet, never questioning it until the earth begins to tremble and split open beneath them. You were the constant in their landscape, the fixed point they could navigate by even when they chose to wander far from where you stood waiting with a patience that should have told them everything they needed to know about the depth of your feeling. The shock they are experiencing now is the shock of someone who suddenly realizes they have been living inside a grace period that has quietly expired while they were too distracted by lesser things to notice the countdown. Every time they chose someone else, every time they left your message on read while responding immediately to others, every time they kept you at arm's length while you made it clear you would welcome them fully into your life, all of these moments were possible only because you allowed them to be possible through your continued openness. But you are no longer open in that way, no longer holding yourself in a state of readiness for their eventual decision to choose you, and they can feel the doors closing throughout the structure of possibility that used to exist between you. You were the constant they took for granted with the arrogance of someone who mistakes another person's love for a permanent feature of the landscape, rather than a gift that can be withdrawn when it is not honored. Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what he did not say explicitly is that the separation of two personalities after such contact is also transformative, sometimes devastatingly so. They are being transformed by your absence in ways they cannot control or predict, feeling pieces of their carefully constructed self-image crumbling as they confront the reality of having underestimated both your value and your capacity to survive without them. The most painful part of their realization is understanding that your absence is not a strategy designed to manipulate them into action, but the natural consequence of someone who finally stopped betraying themselves by waiting for a person who could not demonstrate the courage to claim them. You are not playing games with calculated distance. You have genuinely begun to release them from the central position they occupied in your inner world, and they can feel themselves becoming peripheral in your consciousness the way they once made you peripheral in theirs. This reversal is shattering something in them that has never been shattered before. They are obsessing over you in ways they have never permitted themselves to obsess before, replaying memories with forensic attention to detail, searching for the exact moment when they lost you, or more accurately, the moment when you decided to stop losing yourself in them. Conversations you had months ago suddenly reveal meanings they were too distracted or defended to recognize in real time, and they find themselves wishing desperately for the ability to travel backward and respond differently to moments they treated with such careless dismissiveness. Every interaction with other people now feels like a hollow performance because they are comparing everyone to you, and everyone falls short of a standard they did not know you had set until you were no longer available to meet. The person they are seeing now, if they are seeing anyone, has become a ghost they look through while trying to find your features in a face that is not yours, your laugh in a laugh that does not carry the same frequency, your understanding in eyes that cannot read them the way yours could. They attempted to move on with the confidence of someone who believed themselves to be the prize in this dynamic, the one with options and choice and power, but their attempts keep collapsing under the weight of a truth they can no longer deny. No one feels like you, no one fills the space in their chest that your presence used to occupy. No one knows them with the particular intimacy that comes from genuinely caring enough to pay attention to the details of a person's soul. Late at night when defenses are lowered and truth becomes harder to avoid, they reach for their phone with the intention of reaching for you, composing messages they delete before sending because pride or fear or shame stops their fingers just before they press send. They want to tell you they were wrong, that they see you now, that they understand what they had and squandered through their inability to recognize a rare gift when it was being offered freely. But they remain silent while their mind screams your name, trapped between the desire to return and the terror that you might no longer want them if they do. Where your energy once filled them like water fills a vessel, there is now a hollow space that echoes with emptiness no matter what they pour into it to try to make the aching stop. This is the nature of energetic voids. They cannot be filled with substitutes or distractions or shallow connections that lack the depth of what was lost, and they are learning this through direct painful experience as they cycle through options that leave them feeling even more alone than they felt before. The vacuum you left behind when you withdrew your attention is collapsing other structures in their life, because energy, like water, always seeks its own level, and the level you maintained in TH. Our consciousness was high enough that its absence has created a pressure differential that affects everything around it. They thought they could replace you easily with anyone who offered them attention or attraction or availability, but they are discovering that you are not filling a generic role that any warm body could occupy. You were a specific frequency that resonated with something specific in them, and now that frequency is silent. They try to fill the void with work, with social activities, with new relationships that they enter too quickly and exit even more quickly when those people inevitably reveal that they are not you and cannot perform the particular alchemy that happened when your energy met theirs. Nothing works because nothing can work. The void is shaped exactly like you and will accept no substitutes regardless of how desperately they try to force something else to fit. This is the universe teaching them about value through the pedagogy of absence, showing them what they had by taking it away, demonstrating that some connections cannot be duplicated or dismissed or delayed indefinitely while you explore whether something better might be available elsewhere. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want weekly spiritual guidance that will help you navigate the transformation you are experiencing, because the journey you are on requires wisdom that transcends ordinary understanding. The void they feel is the shape of your absence, and it is teaching them that you were never ordinary, never replaceable, never something they should have treated with such careless ambivalence. If fear were not stopping them, if pride would finally crumble under the weight of their longing, if shame about their previous choices would step aside long enough to let truth speak, they would tell you that they were wrong about everything they believed regarding what they wanted and what they needed, and who they thought they were looking for. They would confess that every person they chose instead of you was a mistake born from their inability to recognize that what they were searching for in distant places was standing directly in front of them the entire time, waiting with a patience that should have broken their heart with its generosity. I was wrong, they would say if courage overcame cowardice. I was wrong to treat your consistency as something boring rather than something sacred. Wrong to mistake your availability for desperation when it was actually the opposite. Strength enough to be vulnerable, confidence enough to show up without games, wisdom enough to know what you wanted, and brave enough to pursue it even when I did not have the clarity to meet you there. I need you, they would admit if honesty won the battle happening inside them. Need you in ways I did not understand until your presence was no longer a guaranteed feature of my life. Need the way you see me and know me and accept me even when I have not earned such grace through my actions. I'm sorry, they would whisper into the space between you if they could find the words to articulate the regret that is eating them alive from the inside out. Sorry for every time I made you feel like an option when you treated me like a priority. Sorry for the silence when you deserved responses. Sorry for the distance when you offered closeness. Sorry for taking your light for granted until I was standing in the darkness created by its absence. But they remain silent because fear is a powerful paralytic that keeps truth trapped behind the bars of self-protection. Because pride whispers lies about how they should not have to chase someone who is choosing to walk away. Because shame about past behavior makes them believe they have forfeited the right to speak these truths, even though their heart is breaking from the weight of unsaid words. They are at war with themselves, caught in a conflict between opposing forces that tear at them with equal intensity and refuse to declare a clear victor. Pride stands on one side insisting that they should not have to be the one to reach out, that if you truly valued them, you would make this easier by giving some signal that the door remains open, that admitting their mistake would be a humiliation they cannot afford to endure. Love stands on the other side with its hands outstretched, whispering that pride is a cold companion in the darkness and that you were the warmth they need, urging them to set aside ego and speak truth regardless of the vulnerability such honesty requires. Fear of rejection battles against fear of loss in a competition where both outcomes feel equally unbearable, creating a paralysis that keeps them frozen between advance and retreat. What if they reach for you and you have moved so far beyond them that their return would be unwelcome, an interruption of the peace you found in their absence? What if they stay silent and you interpret that silence as confirmation that they never cared, cementing a distance that could have been bridged if they had shown even a fraction of the courage you showed when you first made your feelings known? The war rages in the quiet moments when they are alone with only their thoughts for company, intensifying in the spaces between sleep and waking when defenses are lowered and truth becomes harder to avoid. One moment they are convinced that reaching out would be a mistake that would only give you power to hurt them the way they hurt you. The next moment they are certain that not reaching out would be the greatest mistake of their life, the moment they will look back on with searing regret for decades to come. Pride will break eventually, because pride always breaks when the pain of loneliness exceeds the pain of potential rejection. But the question that terrifies them is whether pride will break in time, before you have moved so completely into a new chapter that their return would be nothing more than an unwelcome interruption of a story that no longer includes them. Watch for the specific behaviors that indicate the internal dam is beginning to crack under the pressure of their accumulated longing, because certain patterns always emerge when someone is approaching the moment of breakthrough, where action becomes inevitable regardless of the fear that has kept them silent. They will begin appearing in your digital spaces with increasing frequency, viewing your social media stories within minutes of posting, even though they have not directly interacted with your content in weeks or months. Their presence a ghost that haunts your notifications without making itself fully known. You may notice them liking old posts or photos from months ago, evidence that they are scrolling through your archived life with the obsessive attention of someone searching for clues about who you are becoming in their absence, trying to map the transformation that has carried you beyond their reach. Mutual friends might mention in passing that they asked about you, questions disguised as casual curiosity, but loaded with the weight of someone seeking intelligence about whether the door remains even slightly ajar. The energetic signs will be even more telling than the digital footprints they leave behind. You will find yourself thinking about them suddenly and intensely without any obvious external trigger, their name appearing in your mind like a message being broadcast from their consciousness to yours across whatever distance separates you. You might dream about them with unusual vividness or encounter repeated synchronicities involving their favorite song, their birth date, symbols, or places associated with your time together. These synchronicities are not coincidences, but communications from the collective unconscious, where your souls remain entangled regardless of the physical separation your conscious minds have created. Pay attention to the sensation in your body when these signs appear. Does your chest tighten with hope, or does your stomach drop with anxiety? Your physical response will tell you important truths about whether you genuinely want them to reach out or whether you have moved beyond that desire into something purer. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message if you feel their energy shifting in your direction, because your sharing creates a ripple that helps others recognize the patterns unfolding in their own lives. The moment of contact is approaching whether you are consciously preparing for it or not, building momentum in the invisible realm where decisions are made before they manifest in the physical world of texts and phone calls and unexpected appearances. The question is not whether they will reach out, but whether you will still want them to when they finally find the courage to do so. You hold the power now in a way you have never held it before throughout this entire painful dance. And this power is not the manipulative leverage of someone withholding themselves as a strategy, but the authentic authority of someone who has genuinely reclaimed their center and no longer requires external validation to know their worth. They are the one waiting now, the one anxious about outcomes they cannot control, the one who must face the possibility that their return might not be welcomed even if they gather the courage to attempt it. You do not owe them your waiting regardless of how long you waited before or how deeply you felt the connection between you. You do not owe them an open door simply because they have finally arrived at realizations that were obvious to you months or years ago when you first tried to share them. You do not owe them forgiveness without authentic amends or reconciliation, without demonstrated change or a future together, just because they suddenly understand what they lost. Your peace is the priority now, your wholeness the objective that supersedes any relationship that requires you to fragment yourself to maintain it. If they return and their return is not accompanied by the kind of transformation that matches your own, you have every right to honor your growth by declining to regress into patterns that nearly destroyed your sense of self. If they return and their words are not backed by consistent action over time, you have the wisdom now to recognize performance versus genuine change. The paradox that is liberating you is this: whether they return or not, you have already won, because winning was never about getting them to choose you, but about choosing yourself with enough conviction that their choice becomes secondary to your own. If they come back honest and healed and ready to meet you as an equal, you can evaluate that offer from a position of strength rather than scarcity. If they never return or return unchanged, you can close the door with peace rather than bitterness, because you know you honored yourself throughout the entire process. Both outcomes are victories when measured against the alternative of remaining stuck in the painful limbo of waiting for someone else to determine your worth. This story is reaching its climax whether you can feel the momentum building or not, approaching the inevitable moment when the energies that have been circling each other will either collide in reunion or diverge permanently into separate paths that no longer intersect. Something is going to happen soon that will bring resolution to the tension that has kept you suspended between hope and release, between the past you shared and the future you are building without them. Either they will come back to you, with honesty replacing their previous ambivalence, ready to demonstrate through sustained action, and not just words, that they have done the internal work required to be worthy of the love you offered them so freely before. Or you will close the door with such finality that even you will be surprised by how completely you can walk away from what once felt like your entire world. Both outcomes are victories for you when understood correctly, because both represent movement forward from the stagnant place where you have been stuck. If they return transformed, and you choose to receive them, you will do so as an empowered equal rather than someone grateful for scraps of attention from the table of someone who considers themselves your superior. If they return unchanged or do not return at all, you will continue building the beautiful life you have already begun constructing in their absence. And eventually, someone will arrive who has the clarity to choose you immediately and the courage to love you consistently, without the drama of disappearing and returning in cycles that leave you destabilized. The universe is aligning you with what you truly deserve through this process that has felt so painful, using the crucible of longing and loss to burn away your tolerance for half-hearted love and teach you that you are worthy of someone who sees you clearly and chooses you boldly. Everything that has happened between you and this person was necessary to bring you to this moment of power, where you finally understand that you are not the one who needs to change to be chosen, but the one who gets to do the choosing. Your path forward is illuminated now regardless of whether they walk it with you, and that certainty is the greatest gift this painful chapter has given you.